All right, perfect. Well, welcome everyone to day two of the Endeavor Bootcamp. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Rebecca Negro Rocha, and I lead the growth programs here at Endeavor Miami. So, super excited to be the staff member guiding you all this morning for day two on mastering the art of pitch. So, we are going to be starting in just a second. We're just going to do a quick intro, and then we're going to turn to Chris, who's an Endeavor mentor and kindly has joined us this morning to give us a masterclass on this super important topic. So, like I shared, the topic today is mastering the art of the pitch, and will be presented by Chris Watson, the founder and chief storyteller officer for Craft and Compel. We've had the pleasure of having Chris as part of the Endeavor Network for a few years now. So, I just want to share a little bit about him to give you guys a spoiler. You guys can read here, but Chris has been a storyteller all of his life and really uses the power of storytelling to impact the lives of people and companies. He has utilized stories in leadership, sales, mentorship, and while working for Fortune 500 companies. And he has vast experience working for and with startups as a solo entrepreneur and founding several companies himself. And now with Craft and Compel, he helps organizations enhance their strategic communication through storytelling. So Chris is joining us today from Dallas, Texas, where he lives with his family, to share some of golden nuggets about the art of the pitch. So, for those of you that just joined, welcome. We're about to get started. If you have any questions or any comments you want to share as we start, please use the chat box for that. We will have times and moments where you're going to be able to ask questions and interact with the presentation, but we're going to get started like this for now, and then I'll be here moderating and ensuring that everybody gets a chance to ask questions and participate. So if you're here, please put your cameras on. We want to see your faces, make this as interactive as possible. But I ask you that you remain muted until we get to the point of questions or whenever Chris pings you to start interacting. Okay. So without further ado, Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today, our wonderful speaker. And I'll turn it to you for us to get started.
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate it. I apologize ahead of time. I'm having to work on two devices today. My dog knocked over my computer, and my entire screen is broken. So, you want to talk about a story? That's how my day started. So, I'll be navigating these two screens. So, if you see me looking over here, I'm not making a pitch of my own or anything like that. Just kind of looking at my presentation. So, just wanted to give you a heads up there. All right, let's rock and roll. So as Rebecca said, we're going to be talking about the mastering the art of the pitch. As was read in my bio, I truly believe that all communication is storytelling. And at our company, we tell people that our investors, our co-founders, our clients, that whenever you hear someone tell you something, you metabolize or think about that in story form. And so when you logged on today and you saw the title, you told yourself a story. When you saw my face, you told yourself a story. When you saw the deck just now, you told yourself a story. And that's the reality of the way storytelling works. And specifically around today, we're going to talk a little bit about some psychology and how do we master the art of the pitch. I told Rebecca as we got on, I was like, we probably should have said art and science because I'm a little bit of a nerd, and so we'll talk a little bit of science today as well. But it's gonna be really great. So without further ado, let's move on. So our goal today is to really learn how to build a compelling pitch using the psychology of what story is, and we're going to talk about different investor types. You can see we've broken it up into two parts. The first part will be pitching with some purpose. How do we master a story-driven pitch? I think story gets overused in our culture today, and so we're going to really try to break that down. Like, what does that actually mean, and how do I build a compelling story? And then in the second part, after a nice break, then we'll talk about how do we customize our pitch approach to different investor profiles, because obviously we're tapping and communicating and pitching to different investors. So I want to start off with a little bit of story and psychology and strategic alignment. So as was mentioned, one of the things that Craft and Compel does is that we help founders learn how to tell a very compelling story. Now, what does that mean? Well, people justify the decisions they make with logic, but when they make that decision, they're making it with emotions. And so that's why stories win. That's why they are effective, is because when you hear a story or when you tell yourself a story, you're compelled to take an action. That is what happens in our brain. And so you can probably think of countless examples. But when you think about buying a car, you make that decision typically based on some emotions that you have in buying that car, and then you justify purchasing that car with logic. And so if we think about that, every single investor that we're interacting with has a better future in their mind. They have a better future that they're trying to achieve. Now, for different investors, it's different, but let's just say they're trying to get a really great return on their investment. Okay. So they have a better future in mind. So when they're assessing what you're doing, it starts with this emotional response to whatever you're telling them to say, I believe in this founder. I believe in this company. I believe in the problem they're solving. And then after that, then they use logic to really justify that decision and to look at the numbers and to look at the market opportunity. Unfortunately, many times when we pitch, we kind of do it in an opposite order. And so our goal is, how quick can we create trust, credibility, and alignment with the audience that we have? Anybody here that has ever been in sales, we used to sell by telling everybody our story first. Hey, we do this well. We solve this problem well. This is what we are the masters at. And we tell our story, and then we start asking a little bit questions about them and their problems and what they're trying to solve, and then we try to paint a picture of how we're going to solve their problem. We've really seen this really shift in reverse, that now, and we call it a discovery session, we start to ask the buyer, what is your story? Because we want to know our audience's story first, and then secondly, we want to know what's their better future story. And then lastly, we want to be able to share how we can help them get there with our story. So this is kind of the approach of Craft and Compel that we try to take when we're thinking about pitching, is like, how well do we know our audience, and how can we tell them a story that's extremely compelling, so that emotionally they feel like, oh, this could be a really big problem that needs to be solved, and there's a great return on that. We're going to talk about story structure. It's going to be kind of the next piece here, is that how do we actually craft a story that has a structure that I can do over and over and over. And I tell founders all the time, it's not just about one. You need to equip yourself with multiple stories for multiple audiences, for multiple situations. I'd like to recommend a book. It's a short book. I know people recommend books all the time, but there's a book out there called The Narrative Gym. Narrative Gym. It's by Gary Olson. And if you go check out that book, it's about 99 pages long. He talks about a formula called an ABT, an and, but, therefore. And we'll dive into that, but I would really encourage you to go buy that book. No, I'm not an affiliate partner, and no, I don't make any money off it, but it's just a simple book that I tell everybody that's pitching, hey, go check out this book, because when you're in conversations, you're always pitching, whether that's networking, whether that's an event, whether that's an awesome endeavor event, or whether you're actually meeting with someone to pitch. All right, let's move on. So here's why stories matter. Investors are hearing hundreds and hundreds of pitches every month. If you go and have some fun with ChatGPT, you can even see the insane rise of startups that are out there, but only 0.5% are securing funding. 0.5% are securing funding. We know that we've seen a massive dominance of AI companies, over $100 billion since 2024. And we've already seen a massive increase in funding in 2025 versus 2024. And the goal is, how do I be memorable? So you are 22 times more memorable when you share a story that someone can recall. I mean, ultimately, the goal is that if I can share with someone, an investor or a sales team, or maybe I'm presenting my product to my buyer, if I can present a story that is memorable, then I get the opportunity to transport them back to that moment. the exercise I usually do with founders is I ask them, tell me one of your favorite childhood memories. And whatever that memory is, then it's very easy, obviously, for you to be transported back to that moment. Now, for whatever reason, it was a joyful moment, it was a scary moment, but it had cemented in your brain that it's hard for you to forget that. And we want that when we talk to founders or when we talk to customers or buyers, we want to be able to transport them back to the moment they met us, that they heard from us. And I find that sometimes we think our personality is enough, but unfortunately, a lot of these investors and a lot of these people, they're hearing so many of them that it has to go above just your really awesome charisma and personality. And some of us had to learn that the hard way. So, with the enormous amount of pitches that investors are hearing, I just talked to another investor yesterday, and he said he heard 22 pitches in one day, 22 in one day, which I thought was insane. And I said, "How many did you fund?" And he said, "Zero." And I go, "How quickly did you know that you were going to or not going to fund it?" And he said, "For me, it usually takes about 10 minutes. And I already know this is probably not going to be a viable option." And so when I was talking with him, he really talked about that if I was to ask him a question in a week or in 4 days about the pitch, he doesn't remember half of them. And so I'd highly encourage you that I know there's templates out there. There's like, hey, this is the way you should do it. And the most important thing is that because investors are hearing so many pitches throughout, how can we break the script? How can we tell them a story that is going to be memorable so we can transport them back to that moment? Because many times we share a pitch, we don't get a decision right there in the moment. We have to then go back. Maybe it's bad timing. We got to go back. We don't want to have to keep giving the same pitch over. And so it's really important that we layer it with a story that is memorable. Here are the 5 elements to a compelling story. I'm going to take some time on these. I'm going to kind of walk through them. Okay. So the first one is an identifiable character. We want someone that the audience can relate to. That we want a character that they can be like, okay, I know who that is. I know what they're going through, and they're learning from you. We want then that identifiable character to go through a significant moment, catalyst, if you will. Okay, and it's got to matter. And so you think about, I got a character, and they're going through a significant moment. And then we want that character to have some authentic emotions. Now, what does that mean, authentic? Well, being sad or being burdened, yes, you could argue they're the same thing, but that word burden feels much more authentic. It's specific, right? It's a emotion that I can recognize that it has a deeper meaning than just sad, happy, excited. So I'd really encourage you, and this was dictionary back in the day, or maybe a Google search of a thesaurus. But now you have AI to say, hey, can I find an alternative word to this word and have AI help you with some emotion words that might be a bit more memorable and genuine of a feeling that this character had during this significant moment. And then specific details or sticky details, things that stand out, things that stick in your brain, right? And so this is where I always tell people or ask people, tell me about your favorite Christmas gift that you ever got or your favorite birthday gift. There's a reason why that is sticky in your brain. And when I say, okay, tell me the story about that, you can begin to tell me very vivid things about the story because that it's sticky. And so what we're trying to do is how do I communicate my story in a way that things stick inside the investor's brain so that when I meet them again or see them again or chat with them again, they remember those sticky details. And then lastly, we want a resolution or in some cases a cliffhanger. Cliffhanger creates opportunity, curiosity. So we want there to be a conclusion, kind of a compelling, like this is what can happen next. So these are the 5 elements of a compelling story. Once again, when we say the word compelling, we are trying to move our audience to take an action that we are trying to guide them to. Okay, so these are the 5 elements to a compelling story. I would, really think about in your story. Many times people are leaving out 1, 2, or 3 of these, and we'll get into it here in a second. They always think, hey, I'm the character. I'm going to communicate my own aha story. So let's talk about the identifiable character. So who is your story about? All right, so when we work with founders, I would say this is the number one thing that when I've worked with a founder inside Endeavor or outside, it's the number one thing that is is shifted or changed in their pitch. Okay, because many times we're talking about problem, solution. Here's the success of our company. This is who we've worked with, and they're trying to really build a lot of credibility and trust, hoping the investor says, "Oh, great, this is a good bet. This is a good gamble. I can invest in them. Look what they've already done." I would tell you, though, that investors typically are not going to ask for the story, but they absolutely will ask for the data. They'll ask for the results. And maybe some of you experience this. And so that's why there's an importance in sharing a story. Identifiable character. You can make that your customer that you're trying to sell to or that there's an opportunity for. You can make that the user of your product. And potentially you can make it you if you also were the customer or the user. And that's why you had the big aha. You want to make it very specific. You don't want to make it generic. You want it to be relatable in the challenges they're facing, if you remember a significant moment. And then we want to talk about the journey they have. And so what I would tell you is that it's best if you create a person, a name, a situation, right? And so I remember working, and some of you probably know who this is, but I remember working with Felix. And when I was working with that company and I was talking, to their owner, to the founder, him and I were just chatting about how can we create a character that's going through the situation that Felix solves for a lot of the Latin Americans, that need to move money in different places around the world. And so I remember he had an actual story of someone that they had helped that told him, "Hey, you changed our lives. We no longer have to go to Western Union or wait in a long line or hope that it gets there, that this just makes everything easy." And so I believe the name was Juan. He'll probably correct me and go, "Chris, you're wrong. That's not the name." But I believe it was Juan. And so he tells this story, this identifiable character about a gentleman named Juan and what he was encountering. Thanks so much for supporting me and putting that link in there. It's great. And so he talks about Juan. And when he talks about Juan, then when he gets to the market opportunity, he says there's over 30 million Juans in the world in this same situation. Now, what's happened in that moment is that character is somebody they can align with. They can hear their story. They can feel. They can operate with. When we just tell facts, when we just tell data, sometimes it's hard to grasp that, right? And so we so much better enjoy having a character that I can kind of follow along this journey that we have Juan. And we have Juan going through a significant moment when the stakes are really high and there's a problem that Juan's facing. So, in this case, maybe Juan needs to send money to a family member that's sick, that doesn't have enough money to have a doctor come to the home. So that's a high stakes situation. And there's a long line, or maybe it's a holiday in the US or whatever that high stakes situation is. And so now there needs to be a decision made. And so how do I get money to these people that are in this situation? And so I don't want to, just run on the Felix story, but the reality is each of you have a character, each of you have a user or a customer. Now this can be a specific business. This can be a specific role inside of a business. Like, "Hey, Chris, we work with CTOs in SaaS companies." Awesome. Name that CTO. Tell us what that CTO is going through. The investors need to know, because it's easier for them to follow that journey of the CTO than it is for you to just tell the story generically. All right. And so you want a significant moment that they're going through. It needs to be high stakes. And what I like about this is that many of your companies are future thinking. It's a problem, and you're saying, "Hey, there's a big shift in the world." And so that shift that's happening in the world, you are going to be a guide to help in that shift. And so I would tell you to think about who's the identifiable character, what's the significant moment that they are currently encountering, what's this kind of major decision they need to make, and they need a guide. And that's where your company, comes in. Now, the emotions are the logic that they have to think about, the facts and the figures that validate the decisions they're in, the emotions of like feeling a drive to some sort of connection to, in this case, it was their family. And then we need to think about how are we building trust in the emotions that we're sharing that an investor can be like, yeah, I know that feeling. I know that emotion. I've been there or I felt that. So highly recommend that you shift and think about your, authentic emotions and how you're sharing those in your story, because that is what's going to help be more memorable about what they're encountering. And then sticky details, just some facts here I'm not going to read to you, but you want to create moments that are vivid that they can relate to, that may be a little bit unexpected. I believe in kind of in the Felix story as an example, he talked about the specific illness that a grandma had in another country. And he talked about the grandma, and she was lying in the bed and she was asking for help, and the doctor couldn't come because they couldn't pay the bill. When I say that even out loud, I bet you all can visualize that. You've seen it. Maybe it's been you in your life. And so we want to create for these investors, we want to tell them some sticky details that they're like, oh, I've been there before. I've been in a situation where I had no way to solve this problem. I've been in a situation where my company was on the line, or I was that CTO and we were struggling, to hit our numbers, and we were almost going to go bankrupt. Like, you want to create kind of that sticky detail that people can say, I can feel that, see that, and touch that, because that is what is going to be able to help you transport them back to the moment that they met you. And then lastly, we want to make sure there's a resolution or a cliffhanger. And so a resolution is like, hey, this is what our solution has accomplished. It's the proof of concept. It's the early win. Hey, this is the success that we have. And so at the end of the story, it's like, hey, they were able to use our product, our solution, and then these are the great things that happen. Cliffhanger also works, because cliffhanger is not only have we solved that problem, but that we believe that our product or service can also has an opportunity to do these things. And maybe now you're talking about the opportunity to grow outside of what your core product or solution is. Okay, so I've talked a lot, and it's hard to sit there and listen. So I just want to take a pause here, and I want to give anybody and everybody an opportunity, whether that's in the chat or you want to come off mute and just ask a question as to what you've heard. It could be a how-to question. It can be whatever it is. So I'm going to take a pause here and just kind of let anyone that has a question. Rebecca, I don't know if there's a great way to do this. Do you want them to like raise hand and then they come off mute, or do you have
Yeah. If
cool.
we can raise hand, that would be great. Let me see if I can see here where folks are raising hands.
That's great. I'll let you moderate it, Rebecca, and then they can just ask me. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, whoever wants to start, go for it. You can jump in. And if you do, please say your name. Perfect. Salvador, your name, and yeah, go for it.
Hey, Chris, thank you for the presentation you're giving. Yeah, my name is Salvador Ramirez. I am from the CEO of Boxful. I've been raising funds. I've been doing it without presenting a character, just mostly telling kind of a story. But I have seen that what you said is true, that it has more stickiness if you add a character. But at the same time, I have been in demo days where I see most of the people introducing characters and it becomes a little bit cheesy. So how can you balance that? How do you have more? I know Felix, for example, the company. I recently listened to a podcast from the CEO, and he mentioned this character that you talk about. So it's a powerful example. I don't know if you have any more example of that.
I do have more examples, but I would rather, if we can in the moment, can you give me a quick one-liner about what Boxful does and like kind of the problem that it solves, and maybe we can evolve a character quickly and on the fly here that could not be cheesy.
Well, we make e-commerce simple and accessible for everyone. Basically, we provide e-commerce tools to SMBs and entrepreneurs in emerging markets. Tools as ultra fast.
It's education, or
no, it's like logistics solutions and fintech solutions like ultra fast fulfillment, multi-carrier shipping platform, a smart locker network for pickup and drop off for parcels.
Got it. So I think the first character that I would create would be. And this is how it's not cheesy, is if you have a success story of an actual entrepreneur of an actual company that successfully used Boxful and grew their organization, or maybe they happened to find you and were able to understand how to do e-commerce in a better way, and look what they did. And their actual name and the actual company name, there is a lot of validity in that. Just like I did with my character of Felix, if you could create that right off the bat, hey, I want to introduce you to Tom. You don't have to say his last name. Tom he's a solopreneur that runs blank, 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 blank. And his biggest struggle was blank. And when he found Boxful, everything changed for him, because now he had tools that he never had before. He had and he was able to. So I think like communicating that as Tom, and then the big reveal is, I forgot to mention that Tom now runs a $2 million organization, 0 to 2 million in 4 years. And you can go look him up. He is at XYZ company. So for you and your story, I think your character could be an actual, similar to Felix, an actual person that has been impacted from Boxful. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you have someone like that, or not yet?
We have several customers that started with us from the beginning and continue working with us.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that will work. I will develop this character and this person, because at the end of the day, it's real, so it's easier.
It is real, and here's what I'll tell you: is that the key is that this can also help you with client engagement. Go and actually ask that client, hey, I would love to hop on and do a Zoom podcast with you and just ask you some of the hardest questions, right? And so and I can send you 5 questions that you can ask every customer that will help build this story out. And so one of them, it's the craziest question. It'll feel awkward, but it's really great, is you say, how has Boxful changed your life? That's the very first question you ask. And then when they start telling you how it's changed their life, and they're going to add, surface level answer, you go, man, why is that so important to you? And it's the power of 5 whys. And if you can get and ask why 5 times, you can get to the core of the problem. The core of the problem is where you start with your character. This is what they were going through. So I'll send those to Rebecca, and she can send them out to everybody. But I would tell you that you can absolutely impact your client, your customer, your current customer, and you learn those things about them. Then you can build that character off of them. And let me give you even more advice. You said we have several. Well, then that means you have several characters. And so now when we get into part 2 and we start talking about who you're pitching, you may choose a different character off your shelf based upon the environment that you're pitching, right? So I would encourage you to develop multiple characters. I hope that's helpful.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. So next question, Oscar Herrera. Want to jump in?
Yeah. I've been I've been trying to raise funds since 3 years ago here in the US. That's very different where I come from Chile. I successfully raised $2 million there. And I've been switching about the persona that you're mentioning and actually the facts, depending on the advice I've been receiving. Because I'm receiving people say, no, don't use a cheesy story or a success story for one guy. You need to do something, more like, these are the facts. This is the market you can approach. This is the money you need, and a 5-minute pitch, and that's it. I have listened so many arguments for both that I'm a little bit confused right now. Actually, when they talk about the persona, they normally talk about being yourself, that person that you are talking about and your journey. These have a way to categorize whom you're presenting and maybe have 2 different pitch. What's your advice? Because again, it's been a hard journey, listening a lot of advice, and things are happening within the company, good things. So I don't want to continue, making mistakes in this matter.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your question. And, part 2 of this, we are going to kind of talk about what are the differences between an angel investor, a VC, or a strategic partner. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's one sure way to do it, because everybody is a little bit different. I think the better thing that I would think about is, who is the type of investor that you want to work with? And so why do I say that? Because for me and a lot of founders that I work with, they want a partner investor that cares about the story. And so if you're like, well, no, I don't care about that. I don't care about having a partner, that cares about the story. I just want them to give me money. Well, then maybe your better route is just facts and figures. This is the problem. This is the solution. This is the market opportunity. I need your money. And so I would tell you that it really I would reverse it on you. Instead of how do I need to show up, it's who do I actually want? And then that's who I'm going to be. I'm going to show up. For me, I want someone that cares about the story. Why? Because I care about the story. Because I care about my customers. So that's one, I'll say that's part A. Part B is I think sharing the story is really part of showing the market opportunity. Because if I can zoom in on one that has the problem, and then I show you there's 50 million of them, well, then aren't I giving them facts? Aren't I working both the art and the science of it? Aren't I giving you the facts and the details that you want to know? How much money can you make off this? But aren't I zooming in to, this character? And for everyone here, listen, I'm not suggesting that, you have to like talk about your identified character and your we went long here, but that may not be a long portion of your pitch, right? It might be 1 or 2 slides to open that up to them, but you want to zoom in on use case. This is the person. This is what they're going through. This is what they're experiencing. This is what's going on in their world. And then there's 50 million of those. And that's why this is an incredible opportunity for you. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I would really good.
It needs both.
Good.
I thought it was 2 options, but actually with that I can make it work. Thanks.
Good.
Awesome. And then the last question for now, Eladio.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's a great presentation so far. I have a question. I have a persona that I'm a business consultant now. I'm trying to raise money for the AI, co-creator AI. Doing my business consultation with business consultant for a client. He went from 0 to 1.5 million in 1 year, but I did it by myself. Now I want to do it, with the AI, with the mentor, working with from the inside out. So can I relate my past experience without AI? Now I want to do it with AI, or the persona have to be a new one, a new character? Kind of confused.
Let me repeat it back to you to make sure I understand. So the solution that you provided, right, your consultancy, you helped a client go from 0 to 1.5 million. And that was just in 1 year. And that was just you working with them, whatever your sequence was, whatever your blueprint, right. Okay. Now you're going to do it, but you're going to use with the assistance of AI, or AI is part of your solution in some way. Is that right?
Our solution is an AI mentor. Yeah.
An AI mentor. Okay. So it's almost like an AI agent, but they're going to be a mentor for these people. Is that right?
Also with emotional intelligence, a few newer stuff. Yeah.
I got it. Okay. So it's still the same customer that still is being faced with the same challenge. So yes, I believe you can. My suggestion would be is you want to make sure that everybody understands that, the power of it is that you're able to scale what you did faster and bigger than and then what you could is just a one-man company. That'd be the first thing I would suggest. And when you're talking about the character, and you're going to have to like transition this. Number 2 is that you and I and everybody on the call know that, like, if I hired every one of you in my company and I taught you my way of story pitching, and you're going to go teach other people, the amount of time and effort and emotions and everything that we go through in our daily lives, it would be slow. But if I train an AI to be me and to mentor people, it's fast, right? It's data. Like, there's not as many emotions involved. They don't have to go take care of their kids, or, their car didn't break down, or their dog didn't, knock their laptop over in the morning. So I would actually say your story needs to be about, you recognized that you needed to duplicate yourself and scale yourself at a faster rate. And so that's why you're really excited to now offer an AI, mentor, an AI Horadio mentor. I think that's how I would kind of sell it. That the problem hasn't changed, the situation hasn't changed. You're just able to solve more problems faster than you ever were before. So then I would use that number 1.5 and say, okay, well, if there was 10 of me, then now 10 times 1.5, right? Now we're able to raise that in a year. If there were 100 of me, and Mr. Investor, this is why I need your money, so that we can get 100 of me, right? So for me, that would be, I think that's where I would start in my brain if you and I were working. And then I would just dig in more to what is it that you need to do versus what is it that the AI can do? Because I think that's the biggest win. Rebecca, sorry, I'm gonna go a little bit longer on this one. So here's the other thing I would say. What we know is that, and this is just my belief, you guys can disagree, but I feel like that AI is allowed me to be able to spend more quality time human to human, right? That AI now is doing some of these mundane admin tasks that drain my relational equity, if you will, my first fruits of energy, that now probably similar for you, that if AI can take care of some of these things, you actually get to be better than you were with the 1.5. So not only is AI helping you grow what you do in your blueprint and how to be an AI mentor, but you're also able to have a more white glove, personalized approach that you weren't even allowed to have during the 1.5 million. So if you can find those specific details of like, I didn't used to be able to, I don't know, have a cup of coffee with a client and fly out to them because it was too difficult, or I wasn't able to see them in their first pitch, or now I can because AI is shouldering a lot of the work that I used to do. So I think that, like, try to shift this idea of AI, because this is what's hard right now is everyone thinks they know AI and what it is. So if you can kind of shift that narrative, I think that'd be a win. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you both. So just a quick time check for everybody. We're going to work to take a break at 11:40-ish, okay? So Chris, I'm handing it back to you.
Fantastic. So we have 30 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, before the break. Something like that.
Okay, cool. Okay, so when we think about this story, right, we have the elements of the story. We now think about how are we, and I call this a red thread. How are we threading this through our pitch? And so when one of the simplest things I think you can do right now, is go look at your pitch, see how it's broken up, probably in these kind of 4 categories. What's the problem? What's the solution? What's the market opportunity? And what's the ask I'm making? I recognize, like, hey, here's our team, and here's the process and all of that. Those are kind of built into those layers. But these are really the 4 big major building blocks. And so if you can think about this, how can you take your story where you introduce, somebody early on as an identifiable character, and potentially just kind of thread this through where the story isn't the whole thing. The story is just the person going through the journey of the problem they face, the solution, the opportunity that's there, and now this is why you're making an ask. And so I always, the very first thing we do with founders is we say, hey, give us your pitch. And then we start thinking about, okay, who's the character that we can set this up with? And many times, it's not the founder in many cases, unless the founder has experienced that exact problem. And in most cases, what I see is the founder experienced the problem so long ago, potentially, that now the character, the person, your buyer, is maybe experiencing it in a different way than even what you did. And so, I challenge you to, think about who's that character and how do I map the story throughout the entire deck so that, really it kind of feels like a movie. It feels like a story. There's a journey that's going on. And I don't remember his name, but to his point, we don't want it to be cheesy. We want it to be credible. We're trying to build trust as fast as we possibly can with an investor, because what has this investor probably done? Well, they've seen our deck, right? They may have went to our LinkedIn, may have been referred to us. They may have heard, about us, but they've already kind of done their research. And I won't make anybody answer this, but if they have done all their research, they have already started telling themselves stories about your company, about your product, and about your solution before you even say a word. And that can really help you or that can really hurt you, depending on if your pitch is going to be aligned to maybe your website, or it's going to be aligned to your LinkedIn, or it's going to be aligned to the post or the content that's out there. And so to the gentleman that was talking about that he just heard Felix on a podcast, really believe that the one thing that we did that was great was when he is on a podcast and he's talking, or he's on a stage and he's asked to give a speech, it's a very similar story that he's giving there that then he gives in his pitch. So there's alignment. There's alignment there. And sometimes you don't always get that. Sometimes you get someone that's on a podcast or a post they put out that really isn't aligned, to what their pitch is going to sound like. So red thread, try to thread your story all the way through. I would say this is kind of the iteration part, to the gentleman that said, I've done a lot of these. I go back and forth. Pitching's iteration. Pitching is, can I read my audience? What do they like? What do they not like? And to your point, you're going to get a lot of opinions about what someone liked or didn't like, or you shouldn't use that, or you should use that. The most important thing is your conviction. Do you believe in your story? Do you tell your story? Don't tell it just for the sake of having a story. I always tell people that the greatest storytellers are actually the greatest story listeners. Meaning I'm actually listening to the story of my buyer. I'm listening to the story of my customer. And if I can tell that in a meaningful way, then the investors that are going to invest in me will see that vision. And those that won't, well, they won't, and they don't see it. And that is perfectly okay. All of us here probably watched an episode of Shark Tank where the investor goes, I haven't been in this industry. You don't want me as an investor. I wouldn't know if this is good or bad, right? And that's the reality, is when an investor actually can self-identify who they are. Okay, so the common pitch mistakes. Look, this is pretty straightforward. Is most pitches fail by overwhelming the audience with data. Data. There's no emotional hooks. You're not memorable. Remember, humans decide emotionally and they justify with logic. So I'll take a minute here to talk about kind of some common pitch mistakes that at least that we see. Is one is the founder that's pitching, they don't have a lot of conviction. I don't believe you. Your believability score is way down. And so that's why story, if I asked you to tell me a story of your son or daughter and something they did incredible, you would tell it with conviction. Because why? Because you know your son and daughter. If I told you, I said, hey, tell me the story of one of the coolest trips you ever went on and convince me I should go, you'd be able to do that. And these are some of the exercises, by the way, that we do internally with our founders, because what I find is that if I can get you to tell a story that has nothing to do, it's unrelated from your business, and see the way you tell that story, I just have to take those skills and shift them over to talk about your company in that way, because that is way more compelling for your investor. For some reason, it's like going back to school. For some reason, I might have been really good presenting myself to a girl so that she would date me and go on a date. But man, I was terrible in front of the class when there was a grade on the line and it was, my principal and a few teachers in the audience. And so we have to be able to take that compelling story that we can tell with conviction, believability, and bring that over to our pitch. And this is the best formula that we've seen of having the 5 components of a compelling story, and then thread that story throughout, the entire pitch. Those are the ones for me, I know, that are memorable and aha, and yes, that is it. I want to remember that. And they may not be able to invest now, but they're going to, invest, in the future. And that's where you want to be able to transport them back to the moment. And by the way, just take a note. I know we're talking about investors here, but this also works when you're pitching your product to a potential buyer. It's the same exact thing. I would say it's actually a little bit easier because I can learn a lot about my buyer's story to actually connect that identifiable character with them. Whereas sometimes my investor, I can only learn so much, on the internet as to like, what do they care about and who they are. I can learn enough to be able to communicate, and we'll get into that, into part 2. Okay, so just kind of a quick recap, and then I'm going to open up for a few more Q&A. I've got 2 more things to share, and then we'll get to our break here in about 20, 25 minutes. Okay, So you want to be able to master these five elements. And whoever is writing your pitch, probably, it's either you or you have a marketing team, it's building out your pitch. You just want to make sure that you know your cues. And what I would say that makes a story terrible is when we can't transition very well. Those transitional points are what is a win. We're working with a guy who actually, we help people with TED Talk presentations as well, and speeches, and how do we tell stories in that. And I remember that what was frustrating was that they had all the building blocks. They had a great character, they had a great significant moment, emotions, and details, and even, this massive resolution that people were shocked by. But the gentleman was unable to transition between these elements. And so when they started talking about, Jack and John and who he was, and they started talking about the character, and then they tried to get to the moment, it was a lot of, yeah, this is the character. And he was doing this, and this thing happened. And he had these emotions. And these are some of the details. And ultimately he won. And so when we tell a story of like this and this and this and this and this and this, you're going to lose. I'm going to tell you the most powerful word in the English dictionary. I don't know, maybe in the Spanish dictionary too, but the most powerful word in language. It's the word but. B-U-T, not B-U-T-T, but. Why is that the most powerful word? Because in our brains, when I say that I woke up and I had an incredible cup of coffee and I was super excited to meet with founders and come here and speak with you all, and notice there was one ant. But then as my dog was so excited, she knocked over my computer and broke it. So if you think about what just happened there, I started a story. Hi, I'm Chris. It was this morning. I had a great cup of coffee and I was super excited to come and meet with Endeavor and get to talk with all these founders. But this bad thing happened. That word but is actually what happens in our brain when we're watching a movie and we see this thing going on in the character development. And then there's a but, they're embezzling money. Or there's a but, they're actually a serial killer. Or there's a but, and they're best friends with Bernie Madoff. That but is what actually makes things memorable. If you check a book out of Chip and Dan Heath, they talk about the power of moments. How do you create a powerful moment? Well, you break the script. That is but. We have a script in mind as things are going, and then there's a but. Probably in every single founder's life, we've had a lot of buts. I was on the hook. The investor is going to give me money, but they died. Founder was there. Great. Met with an investor. He said, yeah, we're going to commit all this money, but he went bankrupt. Pandemic, but I lost this, but I got divorced. But that's the shift. So I tell you that when you're communicating and you're thinking about these transitions, the word but is very powerful because it disrupts, it changes, it kind of it breaks the script, as Chip and Dan Heath talk about, which creates the power of moment. Map out your deck. So really think about the story elements and how they can fit into your already existing deck. And just like, when working with Felix and some other companies that are out there, Smart BMO is another one that I got the opportunity to work with. And we looked at their existing deck and we said, how do we tell a story that threads the entire deck? It's not that the pitch deck changed much. It was just more of what we're saying behind each of the slides. So you already have an existing deck. And so I would just challenge you to think about, as you go through the slides, how can I incorporate a character in a moment and some authentic emotions? And then how do I bring it when I get to the opportunity to say, hey, there's this many companies, there's this many CTOs struggling, there's this many wands that are going through this. I do have to share a really funny story. Maybe not funny, maybe just more credibility here. Is that we were meeting with don't remember the company's name. It was an Endeavor company. We were meeting with them and we created our own character, and the name was Maria. And when they pitched the next time, the investor actually asked the question of, why does Maria care so much about XYZ? Or how does this actually help Maria? And it was this big aha for us to say, we made up a character and the investor asked about a made-up character, which just shows you that it was easier for their brain to follow a character going through the journey that you're trying to sell them on of a problem that they're facing, that Maria, this fake person that was facing, needed to be solved. And so I will tell you, the power of stories is that people will latch on to these characters, and sometimes they won't, and that means you need to change your character. You need to try to find a different character that you have. But latching on that character, that was huge for us. I remember the founder pinged us back and said, "You won't believe it. They asked 3 questions about Maria." And I thought, we made up Maria. That wasn't even because this company hadn't really sold, a high degree, didn't have really successful clients. They were very early on. And so we just made up a character that we knew were trying to go through that problem. And so we have to try to balance, these emotion and logic, and know that our investors are making decisions based on this emotional response first, and then they're justifying it, with a logical response. And what I would tell you with the emotion and the logic is that every person on this call, as well as every investor, we all have a better picture, a better future in our brain. And so for a lot of you, the reason why you're here is one of the better pictures is I want funding. I have a vision of what my company could be if I had insert dollar amount. And so that's why you're here. And so your investors also have a better future picture in their brain. Your customers also have a better picture of a future, better future in their brain. And we call it the better future. And here's where we sometimes fail is that we fail because we want to be the hero in the story, that we want our product to be the hero. But in actuality, what we want to be is, normally I'd ask this question, I'm just going to answer it myself, is we want to be the guide. We want to be the guide.
¿Qué tal, amigo? ¿Cómo andas tú?
Muy bien, ¿cómo te va?
Bien.
Rebecca,
Go ahead,
at least he didn't say anything bad about me, right? At least I don't know if he did. Un poquito español, so I don't know what he said.
You're great.
So we want to be the guide. I thought he was going to answer the question. We want to be the guide, not the hero. And I think a lot of times we put ourselves in kind of this hero complex that like, we're the hero here. No, we want to guide the investor. We want to guide our customer to being the hero of the story, right? So think about this. Investor sees, I'll just use Boxful. Investor listens to Boxful and their pitch. And then he has a conversation and says, hey, let's have a meeting 2.0. I really like what you're doing. I think this is a big space. I love the story that you gave me about whoever solopreneur that you created. It makes a lot of sense to me. And then what does he do at that point? He or she, I should say. Sorry, I'm not trying to be sexist, Rebecca. He or she investor. Well, the very first thing I'm going to tell you they do is they go back to other investors that they're either with, or they go back to a friend or somebody close to them, and then they tell the story of how they found Boxful. They found the company that they're going to invest in, and they think there's huge opportunity. So what's happened in that moment? They took the pitch that you gave them, and they went back to go tell everybody how they're the hero. Look what I found. Same with your customer. If your ideal customer profile, your ICP, is a C-suite, let's say, then that C-suite finds your company, finds your product and solution, and then what do? They go back to their company and they go, look, I'm a hero. Look what I found. This is going to change everything for us. And so the goal is, how do we show up and just be a guide, guiding them to hero status? And I think too often we show up and we want to be a hero in the pitch, and we show up with this just like no room for the investor to be a hero, no room for anybody else to be the hero. And in fact, I will tell you, I'll send the episode. There was an episode on Shark Tank where I remember, and you probably have heard this before, where it may have been the Dragon Den, but they said to the founder, they said, doesn't even sound like you need us. What do you need our help for? Because they felt like the founder that was pitching them had it all. Hey, we've got it. We've got all the customers we need. We solved all the problems we need. We're perfect. We're great. And when you do that, it doesn't give the audience an opportunity to see themselves in that story to be the hero. And so I would just really challenge you to think about, how do I build these 5 characters? How do I weave it throughout my deck? And then how do I make sure that I understand what is the better future for whoever I'm pitching? and then really emotionally just be a guide and not feel like I have to be the hero. The last thing I'll share, and Rebecca, we can break early or we can open it the last 10 minutes just for questions again, is this takes time. It's got to be iterations. You're not going to go and work tonight and figure out your whole story and then do it well. No, you got to practice this. You got to look in a mirror. You got to practice it with people that you trust. You got to, hey, was that compelling? Was that not? And fortunately, we have, once again, AI or ChatGPT to kind of help work with us on, I have this idea. Can we build this out? Why would an investor care about this? What would they care more about, this or this? Can you give me some details that are credible? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think my slide says break. So let's open it up for any questions that anybody has that maybe come to mind or didn't get to ask before, and then we can then maybe take our break a little bit early.
Thanks, Chris. So whoever has a question wants to jump in, please raise your hand. I'll call on you and we can get started from there. No questions. Chris covered everything. You want to share what's going on with your company? All right, we have a question. Eladio, please.
Hi, sorry again. Can you elaborate a little more how we can use the same technique with the pitch deck? Because sometimes we don't have the chance to speech, to talk about it. Just sending the pitch. Can we use the same story and over the pitch so they can read it?
So we've done this a few different creative ways. You probably know of Loom. You know Loom? Yeah, and you can use Zoom. It doesn't have to be Loom. But yes, we've had some founders do that. They feel like, hey, if they come read my deck, they really don't get that, that really, really great story aspect, so to speak. And so we've encouraged people to, send a Loom with their deck and be like, yeah, we've got a deck. Now, what you have to ask yourself is it's like a movie trailer. You don't want to give it all to them when you send the Loom, or what's the point of coming to meet with you? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like you want an abbreviated version of, and this is where I would encourage you once again to go look at an ABT statement. That's an and, but, therefore statement. That's in that book that I suggested of the narrative gym. Because an and, but, therefore statement, I'll give you kind of one of ours for Craft and Compel to give you an idea. So like maybe I would send you a deck if I was raising money, and I would say, hey John, I'm sending you this deck over. We're super excited to set up a meeting next week. And what we know is that founders are incredible at telling their own origin story, their own aha story. And they can share that. And quite honestly, they can even raise anywhere from probably $0 or $1 to $5 million. But here's the problem. As their company grows outside of that founder, they're now asking people in their company with different roles to tell a story that isn't their own. And so they see the opposite growth happen. They see a lack of retention. They see a lack of growth. They see a lack of sales velocity. Therefore, Craft and Compel comes in and we work with everyone in your company on their own story to see that number go back up, to see retention go back up, to see growth, see referrals, because now they're telling a story that the whole company, instead of rowing in the same direction, they're all telling the story in the same direction. So that's an ABT that then would set up the pitch of Craft and Compel talking about, hey, this is what we do. We're a story engine. We go into companies and we do these things, right? So I would tell you that ABT statement, it doesn't need to be the whole pitch in the Loom, but I would say giving a short precursor to, hey, this is this, and this is why we do this. I'm excited for you to look into the pitch. So that's one way with the deck in the background. The other way is a company out there called StreamYard. I don't know if you've heard of that, but yeah. StreamYard allows you to embed a video into an email. So you can attach your deck and then have a quick 1-2 minute video. I would say no longer than 2 minutes, 90 seconds or less would be great. And just give a precursor like, hey, this is what I want you to be thinking about when you look through the deck. We're super excited to talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. More questions, more comments.
Yeah, I have a quick question. How does well, I'm in the whole space of gamification, financial literacy for children. So I'm in the process of landing a big government client. How does the pitch kind of change from looking for funding versus a client pitch, which relates to having a character and of course the same ideal? But how would you change kind of the structure of the storytelling there?
Yeah, so write this down, okay? Here's my best. I'm gonna give you a piece, and I'm not a stealer. I'm just a borrower. There's a gentleman named Andy Raskin, Raskin.
Okay.
And if you look up the greatest sales pitch ever, that's a blog that he wrote. Okay. And so when I do a sales pitch to somebody, when I'm pitching Craft and Compel, we use the Andy Raskin kind of model, and we call it building a strategic narrative. It's a little bit different because I don't have to talk about, necessarily market opportunity. I don't have to talk about some of these things, right? And the biggest shift I will tell you is this, is that we don't open our pitch up about us. So when you're going to pitch a customer, we don't talk about us. We talk more about this big relevant shift that's happening in the world. And some of you might be able to adapt this to your pitch deck. We've done it, but big relevant pitch that's happening in the world. So in your case, right, it's probably talking about, I don't know, all of the noise that's out there with financial literacy, or the big shift is that parents want to teach better financial literacy than what they had, right, with their kids, but they don't really have the tools or the knowledge. And so they need a way to get their kids excited. And that's where the gaming comes in. We need kids to get excited about financial literacy. We need them to get excited about monies and dollars, and we need it to be on their level. I made that up. You may be like, yeah, you're wrong. But so that's the big relevant shift. The big relevant shift is that kids are learning about money at a substantial earlier age, and there aren't enough resources out there that's at their level that can grow with them. Big relevant shift. I start with that. Then I talk about there's going to be winners and losers. This is the Andy Raskin model. Winners and losers. There's going to be families that gamify and make it fun for kids to learn about financial literacy, how to invest, what's the stock market, how do I save, and those lessons early on. And then there's going to be the losers, as we call them. No feelings hurt, but the losers that just keep having the same relationship with money that maybe they did or that their parents did, and there's really no growth, and they can't answer the question. So what do the kids do? Well, then they go online and they're learning from who knows who that maybe not be teaching them effectively. And then as soon as they get money, they're spending it. They're not saving. They don't really understand what it is. So winners and losers, right? And I want you to notice something. I have not talked about what at this point. What have I not talked about in my first two slides?
You haven't talked about your solution, like what you're bringing to the table.
Correct. I haven't talked about me. I haven't talked about my solution. So it's already different because what are they expecting? They're expecting me at the very front to be, hi, I'm Chris, and this is my company, and these are all the companies we've worked with, and here's all the success we had. That's the same pitch they get from everyone else. Right. It should be first, big relevant shift. Those that capture this shift and win, the ones that are winning are doing this thing. Well, the thing they're doing, by the way, is using your product and your solution, right? The losers, they're not doing that. Then slide 3, it would be, what are the special abilities that we have to help people win in this shift, right? And so ultimately what we want is we want them to realize, wow, I want this thing. I want to be great in the shift that's happening in the world. I don't want to miss out, but man, I need someone to guide me and help me. Well, who are they going to choose? Well, the person that's talking to them right now about the shift that's happening in the world. The key is the shift has to be big enough and high stakes enough that they care. And so if you go look at the deck, if you go look at that blog, the greatest sales pitch ever, I would say really kind of look at that deck, and it's older, but you can pull the components and be like, oh, this is what was happening in 2013. That's why they said this. Oh, this is the big shift that was happening in the world at that time. So just think about that and adapt that for your, gamified financial literacy. By the way, side note, sorry, Rebecca, I was a financial literacy teacher at a former part of my life, and I had to create a full curriculum. And I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but you might go look at napkin finance. Do you know napkin finance?
Oh, of course. Yes, I'm in the finance world, so of course I know what napkin
Love it.
finance is.
So that was something that we utilize with our kids all of the time, which was very effective because it, it helped them, help them out. So anyhow,
Yeah, they're
just
pretty cool.
side note. Yep. Okay. What's next? Thank you. Was that helpful?
Yeah, very. So drop the character in this sense, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, we have a comment from Adriana. Chris Watson, can you write your recommendation of best sales pitch? Adriana, do you want to expand on that? Adriana, we can't hear you. Adriana, for some reason your audio is not coming through. No, we can't hear you.
I think she wants it typed out, is what she means.
Oh, maybe.
Andy Raskin, greatest sales.
Maybe something, Adriana, in your settings with the audio. In the meantime, we'll come back to you. Anybody else has a question or comment? Oh, maybe that was it, Chris. Thank you. Adriana, was that what you were looking for?
Yes, that's what.
Perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. All right, guys. Any other questions before we go into break? No questions? Okay, so we are going to go into break. I'm just going to put it here for us. There you go. We're going to go into a 10-minute break. So let's come back at, well, not 11:49, 11:50, 10 minutes. Everybody go to the bathroom, grab a coffee, drink, answer your emails. And then we're going to come back for the second half of the session, which is going to be about knowing your audience. Okay. So please don't leave. Just put your cameras off. If you need me, you can send in the chat box. And then we're going to see you guys in 10 minutes. All right. All right, everyone, welcome back. We're now going to go into the second part of the day. So if you don't mind starting to put your cameras back on, and then we're going to get started. Stop sharing. All right, let's start putting your cameras back on because we're going to get started. All right, Chris, whenever you're ready to start sharing your screen, then we can give folks a few seconds to jump back in.
And we'll wait for a few more cameras to turn on.
Yeah. All right, whenever you guys are ready, let's start putting cameras on, and then we're going to get started for the second half.
All right.
Perfect.
So I think this aligns a lot with several questions that were, that kind of came in. And, these are based on, our research, our experiences. You're welcome to disagree and argue. And obviously this is more about the majority than the one-off that you're like, oh no, this one angel, they were about blank. But when we think about the different audiences that you might be presenting to, what we really want to lean into is what is their motivation? What is the thing that they are trying to determine to make their decision quickly, right? Man, in our culture today, I see my own son making decisions at a faster rate than even I, would make when I was growing up. And those decisions are making a decision about a friend on the playground, a friend in class, making a decision about he's watching a movie and he's like, oh, that's the bad guy. And we've been watching for like 30 seconds, or that's the good guy. And so I think we're seeing a rate of people making decisions at a faster rate. And it probably has a lot to do with the rate at which we're getting information now, right? The way we can scroll on TikTok, one video, next video, one video, next video, one video, next video. And so we like to make our decisions as quickly, as possible. And the way we make the decisions is typically how we're wired up, what our mindset is, with the beliefs that we have. And so when we look at these kind of three major groups, and I know that, one of the questions was about a buyer that we're trying to sell to. And so you could potentially lump them into this as well and think about what their individual motivation is. But for angel investors, typically the majority of the angel investors I know here in Dallas, there's a bit more passion and emotional connection into what they're trying to fund, right? The group is made up of, some wealthy individuals that care about the founder, want to know the founder's story, and they're probably passionate about furthering these projects. They also typically like to tell other people about the projects that their funding. I don't know wherever you're located in your world, whether that's, Miami or other places, you can kind of think about your angels investors, but I know from our experiences of most of the pitches that occur, it really is, there's a heavier emphasis on the emotional connection and the personal passion of the angel investor, meeting the founder and what they're going through and the problems they're solving, the experiences they have. For the VCs, we find that there's a substantial bigger emphasis on their portfolio, the scale, market size, the return they're going to get, and thinking about what does their porto or the portfolio, what kind of company do they need. They're also looking at past experiences, if you're in a certain sector, of saying, I've had a great success in health tech, or I've had great success in fintech, or I have great success in, and so when they think about that, that's also something that's going into kind of their motivation as to what kind of VC are they and how great are they at. And then we look at a strategic investor, a strategic kind of partner, and they're absolutely looking at a kind of a synergy alignment. What kind of partnership is this going to be? And so, why do we throw all these out here? Because as great as mastering the art of the pitch and having a really great story, if I was, I hadn't planned on doing this, but you don't have to raise your hand, but most people know this company, right? Liquid Death. Everybody can see my screen, right? They can see me. Okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry, I have two screens. So, all right, Liquid Death, right? So I remember when I first started buying Liquid Death and drinking it.
We see the other one. Sorry, I see know your audience.
What'd you say?
I see the other screen, I think. Know your audience.
Oh, know your audience.
No, he's talking about his camera, I think, right?
Yeah, my
Is that what
camera.
you're referring to?
Yeah, the thing I'm holding up the camera. Do you see that, Patricia?
No.
No, you can't see my face?
No.
I see your face, Chris.
Okay.
Patricia,
Okay.
maybe you can find his image.
My tile.
Yeah,
my
his tile. There you go.
I'll do a better narration because I have a good face for radio. Okay. I'm holding up a water can. That's the company's name, Liquid Death. Have you heard of this company, Patricia? No. Okay. There's a company out there. It's called Liquid Death. And you're thinking in your mind, what are you talking about? Why would there be a water that's called death? And if I can, to humor you, there's a full story on the back that if you go look up this company, the idea is they say they want to murder their thirst. And you're thinking about this language and you're like, oh my goodness, it's water. Well, the same reaction that some people here may be having, that this is called Liquid Death, they telling themselves a story by this can. All right. Now, when I got it, I thought, man, that's cool. It's disruptive. I'm a story guy. I read the story on the back and they're talking about how, by the way, it's a metal can. So one of the other things is that they want to eliminate plastic bottles. That's why they put it in a metal can. And they're putting it at venues where maybe someone's not drinking alcohol, but they want, the appearance of like, I'm not drinking a bottle of water, I'm drinking a can, I'm part of the group, right? And so there's a little bit of acceptance. I bring this up because when we're telling a story, we have to think about that story from multiple audiences and multiple angles, because the story can be shared in multiple different ways. So ironically, when I have drank Liquid Death at my home, there's also, they came out with a tea. I'm holding up a can. It's called Rest in Peach. It's a tea. My 9-year-old son thought I was drinking an alcoholic beverage. We call them adult beverages in our home. He goes, oh, I always thought you were drinking adult beverages. Well, I've driven in a car drinking a can of Liquid Death. So now I'm wondering, did my kid think I was drinking and driving? Because I was just drinking water, right? And so when we think about a single story that maybe you're starting to craft, you have to be able to tell that story from multiple perspectives according to this person's motivation. So my story that I might have, I might change the emphasis of that story with a VC, and I might share it differently with an angel investor, and I might share just a little bit different with a strategic investor or strategic partner. And so what we say is one size doesn't fit all, does not fit all, okay? And so if you see that image on the right on my screen, right? We have the same item in 3 different ways. We have an apple, we have a whole apple, Then we have a sliced apple, and then we have applesauce. Well, it's still the same core material. It's an apple. I'm just serving it in different ways, right? So like I might give applesauce to a baby. I might do apple slices for a kid, and I might give the whole apple to, I don't know, a teacher, because an apple a day keeps the doctor away, they say. So you have to know who is this audience. You have to understand who they are. And you might be able to learn some of that through AI, through research, through what have they funded before, through their website, through looking up that individual's LinkedIn. But the more you can learn about them and what they care about, the easier it is, and you can see here, easier it is to tailor your pitch for the audience. You may not be using the identical pitch for everyone. There may be a shade differently. Now, when I say that, it could be a similar slide deck, but the pitch that I give may shift just a little bit based upon the audience, because I want to emphasize different things about the story. Another common mistake is I'm only focusing on the features, the functions of the product, instead of highlighting what really matters to this specific investor or audience. Ignoring the investor motivations. I keep talking about motivation. That would be the exercise that we normally do. Hey, what's the motivation of this investor? Well, okay, they just funded X company and they invested them and for this much money. This company's now grown this much. Okay, they're trying to find another company like that. Okay, they have only invested in AI companies. What's the likelihood they're going to invest in us? Okay, we're another AI company. Does that help us? Does that hurt us? So really start thinking about what is the motivation that, you know, this investor might have. And you can see a better approach is like researching, you know, what drives them. And we can learn a lot by the things that they share, either on a podcast, on LinkedIn, an article they share, because that's what they're, you know, essentially saying, I agree with this. I agree with this statement. And so the more that we think about our investors and what they're putting out into the world, or what I would say is the stories they're telling, I'm learning more about my audience's story, so that when I go and do my pitch, I try to align that. Now, this might feel counterintuitive, but you know, we have even had some situations where a question or two was really effective to ask, you know, to ask the audience in the moment. Now, I would say if you're on a stage during a pitch competition, you don't have time to say, hey, Mr. Investor, can I ask you a question? But I will say you can ask rhetorical questions and those work. But many times I've been in these pitches where it's a virtual call. They're inviting an investor, say from Europe, and they're in, you know, South America. The investor comes on, and we always start with one or two questions just to really get a gauge for, you know, hey, you saw our pitch. What was the thing that was most exciting, made you most curious? And what was the thing that you felt like, this may not be for us? And if I can learn those quickly, then I know how to almost tell my story in a vein or in a way that might be more effective. Common mistake, something you might be feeling today: information overload. I don't want to be overloaded with information. I want customized content depth for your audience. What you'll notice in even my presentation today is that in my opinion, it's not a lot of information. It's the same information over and over. Hey, look at your story. Hey, know your audience. Hey, speak to their story. If we keep saying those things over and over, it's much more memorable for the people that are sitting here thinking, okay, what is my action steps? What do I need to do, you know, moving out of this boot camp from day to day? What is my takeaway that I can go do? We want the investor to have a takeaway of who you are. This is usually a good time for me to stop. Rebecca, I know we're early on, but just one or two questions as you kind of heard these things, of some things you might be already thinking about, either, you know, this slide or one size doesn't fit all. Anybody? One or two questions. And you can type them in the chat if you don't want to talk. That's fine too.
Feel free to just jump in and speak, and then the others can raise your hands and I'll pick on you. No comments, no questions?
This is exactly what I was asking before, so now it's even better answer. So thank you.
No problem. Anyone else? Okay. I think that means I'm doing a good job. I hope.
Yeah, you're being thorough.
Okay. So when we talk about this kind of story, story method, I don't want to lose sight of that when we start talking about the different types of investors, right? Because I think it's important. Yeah, where family offices fit in your classification. Luis, this is a great question. I'll pause here and I'll answer this. So, it's really dependent on what that family office invests in. So let me tell you about Dallas. Okay, Dallas actually has the highest per capita family offices in all of the United States, and a majority of where those family offices invest is what they know: oil and real estate. And so to get money from those family offices is very, very difficult. And so when you're talking about breaking the script and giving them a pitch that is outside of that, it becomes yes, it can be. A family office is much more of a strategic investor than it is, say, you're sitting there and giving them a pitch that they want to, hey, yeah, we're going to invest in, what your problem or solution is. What we found here is that we try to find family offices that have either a philanthropy fund that they're able to contribute to. And here's why. Is because they know the returns that they're going to get on oil and gas and real estate. They know what those are. They're quantifiable. And remember, most of these family offices, they have someone that's kind of managing their portfolio for the wealthy people, right? And so what happens is that for them to go back to whoever's money they're managing and say, hey, we've got this really great AI startup. The person looks at him and goes, are you an idiot? I don't want to invest in that. Just keep giving me my insert number returns that I get from the strategy we have. So the shift we've seen here in Dallas, and what I'm a part of an organization called NTX Collective, North Texas Collective, where we began to work with some family offices on, hey, build a philanthropy fund, and you just look at this as philanthropy. Now that's weird for us because we're like, no, we're talking revenue, and we're talking about we're going to make money, and we're going to scale, and we're going to grow. But for them, they're more likely to have $500,000 or $3 million inside a philanthropy fund where they're funding startups. So I would tell you, from a strategic investor perspective, you're going to want to find out what family offices already invest in some startups and which of them have a little bit more longer of a risk where they can wait to get a return 5, 6, 7 years potentially with some of our startups. So it's a very good question. It's a much longer conversation than I would say, but it just takes an extra layer of investigation and research. But what we've seen as success is philanthropy. And if you will email Rebecca and say, ask this question again, and she pings me, I'll send you 1 or 2 people that actually talk about this, like in the market, in the world. There's a couple of people that talk about this that I know we brought them into NTX Collective and had them even chat about this more because of the high rate of family offices. So great question. Thanks for everybody else that's humoring me and let me talk about it when you're like, maybe I don't care. Luis, was that helpful at all? Let me ask.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes, it was great question. I had do I have a minute to share something with the audience?
How about can we table that and share it at the end? Do you mind?
Yeah, yes, of course. I like to share something with the audience because I think it's an interesting story.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Let's table it, and then when we go to Q&A, then Rebecca can help you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about this, like I said, the core story here. So the foundation, I need to move this box, I apologize. The core story elements remain consistent throughout the pitch. So regardless of who the audience is, and this is why this is broken up, we have the foundation. We still need to identify the problem. We still have the key character, and we have this kind of like basic, solution that's there. Where the customization comes in, and what I would almost say is, back to the liquid death can, is like a different perspective that we're giving on a product or a solution. For me, liquid death, I like it better because it's in a can. It lasts. It stays colder longer. The other thing is it's very disruptive, and so people always ask me questions about it. When I drink it at networking events or whatnot, people are like, "What is that?" Conversation starter. So it's different, and I do it intentionally in different places. So for you, you need to think about your audience, the profiles, their priorities, their motivation, and then shift maybe which metrics are we sharing? Do I share the opportunity earlier? How do I adjust what I emphasize in my story? And then is there some more technical depth that I need to provide? Remember, we said angel investor, they want to connect typically more from an emotional, passionate front. But maybe that VC, I do include numbers earlier on that they're able to grab. And I think this goes back to, I think it was Oscar earlier, they was just kind of talking about, and maybe it wasn't, but I've heard different things. People come to me and say, you shouldn't be telling the story, it was too long. Or, hey, you just need to get to the facts and get to the numbers, right? And so I would say that, like, that may have been from if you think back to the people that gave you those advice, which hat they wear. Like, oh, that was a VC, that was more of an angel investor, that was a strategic partner, that was, I don't know, private equity. Like, so thinking about kind of those kind of different dimensions and different hats, that's why they may be showing up differently. So if I can take my same story and emphasize different points of that story, then now I'm speaking directly to the audience. We call it an audience-driven approach, and kind of taking our story-driven pitch to an audience-driven approach. How do I communicate to them? To specifically to them. I'm seeing a question here. Let me scroll down here. Building a pre-MVP sports tech startup inspired by personal experience, my family, and I face real challenges at this part of business. How much should I lean into the personal story and presenting your pitching and startup? I would tell you, when you're speaking to an angel investor, an individual investor, absolutely I'd lean into the personal story. It's difficult because I would probably have to hear it to tell you if it was the right story for a VC. Because we tend to layer in too many details sometimes when it's a personal story. So my suggestion would be can you take your personal story and either create a different character, or someone else that struggled with this, since it's pre-MVP, maybe not, and then tell a story about someone else that really is your story. It's not a lie, it's not deceitful, it's still the story. We're just changing the character to be able to share that story and get into the numbers quicker of this sports tech, product or solution, that this person experienced. It kind of takes the emphasis off of ourselves. So,
yeah, this is more for angel investment for now. It's not for VC ready, of course.
Perfect. So angel investor, absolutely. I would lean into your own personal story. That's where I would get into some, you put it, you said, my family and I face real challenges. Okay, well, I want to hear the sticky details. I want to hear the authentic emotions. I want to hear, something that occurred in that was like, this was overbearing. I was burdened by this. I see my kids' faces. They were crying because of this, et cetera, whatever the sports tech is. And then for you to then still open up for the angel investor to say, hey, there is 500,000 families, 30 million families, 100 million families that are going through this exact situation right now, and there is not a solution on the market, or the solutions on the market that we tried out weren't good enough. So with angel investor, absolutely lean into kind of your your personal story. And then how you win, I will tell you, is if you've interviewed or at least went and spoke to other families to say, have you ever been in this situation? Because that at least provides a little bit of credibility to say, and by the way, that was back to Felix. That is actually what they did, is they stood out in front of Western Unions or MoneyGrams and interviewed the people waiting in the line. That's one of the stories he tells that I thought was incredible. He's like, why do you come here? What do you like about this? And this is like pre them even creating really what Felix was going to be when he was in college. They just sat there and interviewed people and said, what do you like? What do you not like about it? What do you like about it? And they took all the best and all the situational things, and then that's how they build out their product. So I would tell you, the first thing I would do is go interview as many other families that are like you all, to then be able to use that in the angel investor, because you don't want them to say, and that might be only a problem that you have that you're trying to solve. And instead, well, no, we've interviewed 500 families over the course of X amount of time, and 92% of them have said, yes, that is a problem I'm trying to solve.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yes, we've done some of that research, and yeah, seems like a big problem. Thank you, Chris.
No problem. All right, so let's move on. The one thing I did want to highlight, if I didn't say it, was depth So like there is opportunities for technical depth. Don't get so far into that depth that it's data and they're like, oh no, I can't get out of this, because they will ask you the data points they want to know. So just keep that in mind. They're very rarely going to ask you, well, tell me about your personal story and how you had this aha moment. You're not going to get that question, with a lot of VC specifics. But they may say, okay, I've looked at the data that you shared with us. Tell me about this, or tell me about that, or could you change, your margin, your cost of goods. They'll ask about a technical detail if that is what is most important, or at least their motivation. Just keep that in your mind. People will ask facts and figures, but they rarely are going to ask, ask the story. There was a time in my life where we actually trained. I trained salespeople to sell tractors. You might know the company Kubota. You might know the company John Deere. And I remember that a lot of these salespeople wanted to show up and tell people about the horsepower and all these like technical details. And there really wasn't a good story about who is the identity of the person that would thrive using this piece of machinery. And when they started to do that, then what was the next question? Oh, what's the horsepower? What's the pulling power? What can it hold? How many tons? And they started asking all the details. And so with not leading with that, it kind of builds the curiosity for them to be like, hey, I think you're talking about me as an identity. What are all these details? And we see it time and time again that investors will ask some of those details, that they may feel like, for you, I need to share all these up front. So we talked about the motivations, and I'd like to spend a little bit more time here because I think this is huge for all of our audiences. So angel investor, focus on your founder journey and why you care about it, why it's something that you absolutely care about it. Now, in my experience, the angel checks are smaller in most cases. I know here in Dallas, a couple of angel networks that we have, they're smaller in nature, but they give you a bit more of a runway to really investigate and get to a place where then you might be able to go to the VC and now have a pitch about, hey, this is the traction that we have. This is the potential that we have. This is the opportunity that we have. And so angel investors, those are the people that I'm meeting at networking events or Dallas Startup or some of the things that we have here. And they're cutting checks, but they're cutting much smaller checks that they're bought into, and it's an emotional tie. They're passionate about it, and they see the mission of it, and they believe in the problem that you're solving. I want to spend a little bit of time on strategic investors, because I really feel like that when we think about, if you've heard the phrase, the WIFM, or what's in it for them, that there's a lot of value that if I've been going to angel investors and they can't give me an investment big enough, if I've been going to VCs and they just can't see the vision or the opportunity or they don't believe in it, that going to look for somebody that, there's a bigger strategic investment there, that maybe my product helps grow their product, or that we share an audience, or the goals that I have, the ecosystem I'm in can actually increase, your ecosystem. And ironically, and Rebecca, I don't want to say the wrong bank. Can you tell me the banking partner that Endeavor has for this boot camp and for some other events that you guys do?
JPMorganChase.
Got it. So if you think about JPMorganChase, they have made a strategic investment into Endeavor. And the reason why that they have done that is because the founders that go through Endeavor, JPMorganChase is like, we want those people to be in our ecosystem, whether that's getting a loan, getting a bank account, being a member of our bank. And so for them, that strategic investment is saying, hey, we care about Miami and we care about the founders and the startups that are going through Endeavor. And so when you think about that as a strategic investment, that's why they were able to get that funding. I find in strategic investors that if I can paint the vision of, hey, when I grow, you grow. When I get traction, you get traction. I'm telling this story that falls directly in line with your story. There's a win there. And so sometimes if you're striking out with the other two because of whatever reason, start to look at, is there any investor that's a strategic investor that maybe is on a similar journey? Maybe they're just a couple laps ahead is what I would say, right? And so they're looking for opportunities of how do I invest in something that helps grow try to grow their business as well. And a side note, at Craft and Compel, we have an event business called Crafted Events. And this is actually the way we get a majority of our sponsors, is that we try to find sponsors that we have their audience, right? Endeavor has an audience that JPMorganChase wants. And so when we have someone's audience, they're more likely to make an investment into us if they believe in what we're doing, because then our audience is then going to learn more, about their product. And so ironically, I think about, Smart BMO, and Smart BMO, you can look them up, but, they're a company that was helping people in Latin America, Hispanic people, really learn, or Latinos, I should say, how to sell on Amazon. And so there was this idea of like, how do we help people understand the power of maybe they're selling something in a shop in Argentina or in Colombia, and they could be selling that product on Amazon and make US dollars that then they could spend in Colombia. And so Smart BMO recognized, wow, like Amazon wants the people of Latin America to be selling on their platform because obviously they make money. And so they were able to build a strategic partnership and even investment a bit with Amazon into Smart BMO. And that's super powerful, and because they had their audience. And so I would tell you that sometimes you might be in a situation where you should think about it from, I'm doing all these pitches, I'm not winning, but is there a strategic investment or strategic investor that I have somebody's audience that they want, that they need? And so there can be a huge win there for when we're thinking about their motivation for their growth as well. I've even seen, and I think Rebecca can speak to this too, we've even seen sometimes where startup founders meet each other at Endeavor and they recognize their products are a strategic aligned products to come together and then build a new solution that would be even easier to sell and easier to build. And so that's been kind of a cool thing, to see in the past. Okay, so let's talk about like, what does it mean to actually like, yes, I used a little bit of AI. I don't know if I like tailoring, but we'll use tailoring just for the presentation. Tailoring the story or shifting the perspective of the story, emphasizing it in a different way. And so, with angels, their heart is what's leading them. VC's growth and strategic partners is fit. And so when you think about that, it's really want to think about with the angels is, has this angel been through similar thing as myself? Has this angel funded other founders like me? And how did they win? How did they succeed? And then how do I make sure to really think about the mission and the passion of the story? And as I said, if I don't believe you, the storyteller, I don't believe in your product or your solution. I won't make us raise our hand, but how many times have we been in a sales pitch of some sort and we just don't believe that the salesperson or the person pitching us, we don't believe that they believe in what they're telling us, that they're just doing it because they have to, because they need a job, right? A solution that may have been pitched to us. When I say this, I'm even talking about sometimes when I've gotten on with a major Fortune 100 company and I'm listening about a CRM, or I'm listening, it's about a video product and some sort of technology SaaS product, and the person pitching me and selling me, I have to look at them and say, I just don't think you actually believe what you're saying. And so it makes me not want to buy, it makes me not want to pursue. And so with the angels, we just have to really make sure that we're emphasizing, this connection, this mission, this passion of, I care about this story and I want you to be a part of this journey. And you can see that, as was spoken, I think it was Salvador that just said, hey, this is pre-MVP. We're early on. That's why we're meeting with angels. So some of this is mirroring the journey of your company with the right investor as to where this investor is on their investment journey, right? And so sometimes they remain angels. Sometimes multiple angels, shift and they move into kind of this VC firm. And then sometimes these VCs move into a PE firm, right? So there's kind of a growth in those as well. With the VCs, and this is the biggest pushback that I get is like, VCs don't care about the story. They just want to make money. They just care about how much return am I going to get? How much scale? How is this going to be scalable? What's the opportunity? And it's not that I disagree, with that. That's what they care about most. But the thing I continue to see is that it's much easier if I have a semblance of a story there that I can transport them back to the opportunity. When I call them back up, when I ping them through LinkedIn, when I meet them again, I can be like, hey, remember, this is what we do. Remember I talked to you about my character and he was this or she was this and they were going through that. If it's good, they go, oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. Because remember, they're hearing all these pitches and they go to all these, different networking events. And so they just say, hey, remember when we met at blah, blah, blah in 2023? No, I've met 100,000 of yous. You're not, unfortunately, Chris, you're not memorable. I remember thinking, man, I'm memorable. Why do I need a great story? It's not the case. We need a great story for it to be memorable for, for these VCs. And then for the strategic partners, like I said, I would be shifting my story to talk about, how do we integrate? What's the benefit scenario of you and I both growing if this happens? And I think there's a faster speed of potential investment and growth with these strategic partners is what I'm seeing now. And so what I mean by that is, we're seeing this big upwork of gig work or fractional work. And we're seeing a major shift. I know it's even in my business that like as a fractional chief storyteller, we're having other entities that are maybe fractional marketing operations come to us and say, hey, how do we join forces? How do we invest time and money and energy to each other's businesses? And I'm seeing this more and more where it's like 5 or 6 fractional whatevers they are coming together, and now they're able to build a better product overall that they're able to sell, make more money off of, and then have a more robust solution. And so I think the similar thing can be said for finding a strategic partner that might be a little bit further ahead in the journey. Is how are we integrating with them and how are we communicating a story for them to be like, hey, this is most people may not like this word, but a win-win for both of us where we can grow. It's now just about strategic alignment. What story are they telling? What story are we telling? At what point does the handoff occur? At what point are they conversation ready? Some of those things. Okay, so 3 pieces that I think really, I want to highlight out of here are, number 1 is knowing your audience. And, fortunately, I can't say it's always great, but with the power of AI, I'm able to at least grab data about a specific individual or their company at a faster rate than I ever was before. But, I use LinkedIn, I'll use Instagram, I'll use Facebook. I'll try to find as much information as I can. I don't kill myself about it. I probably spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the value of it, to learn as much as I can about the individual. It's just like anything else that you maybe have had to practice. The more practice you do, the better you are about finding those little details and being like, I think this is what matters to them. And then testing that as you're pitching or communicating. And then, like I said, 3 tailored version. It's not necessarily different. Could be the same. It's an apple slice or applesauce. It's the same. You're just shifting the narrative a bit to meet, to meet the audience of the buyer where they are. And then having that one core story that we feel really confident to tell. The one other piece I'll say here is that I may have one core story, but I have ways of telling it in 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 60 minutes, 45 minutes. I can tell that story in all those different ways. That takes practice. There's an art to that. But if you can get really great at finding your core story and saying, okay, how do I tell this conversationally, right? That might be the ABT statement that I say pretty quickly. How do I say this if I get like 5 minutes with somebody with, a beverage in hand, maybe a liquid death in hand, nice callback, Chris. Thank you. Liquid death in hand, and I'm drinking with somebody and I'm able to, to ping that back and tell them that in a short frame of mind. Or I'm on a stage and I'm going to pitch competition. I know we have a pitch competition coming up. Endeavor's talking about how do I tell it in that frame. That's when you're going to win, because it's like a metaphor I would say is, am I pulling out the right arrow to hit the target? And do I have those, do I have those quills, so to speak, ready and equipped, ready to be able to do that? And many times we start with 1, and that's okay. But the challenge for you is, how do I do it in 5? How do I do it in 10? How do I do it conversationally? How do I do it on a stage? How do I do it in a presentation? Maybe I have to give a presentation. How do I teach others, in my company to tell that story, as well? This is kind of my final takeaway, is that your story is your secret advantage. The story you have, most founders are focusing on data and metrics, but you're going to stand out if you have a powerful story. Know your audience, tailor your pitch to match where their motivations are and the priorities. And then, obviously the result is, it's a cool picture there, but like funding, how do we get money to help grow what you're trying to accomplish, in your businesses and in your worlds? And ultimately that story is hopefully going to build credibility and trust at a faster rate for them to be like, okay, I think I get it. Yep. I understand what they're going through. Great. And then now market opportunity. Oh, there's so many of those that are out, out in the world or the ecosystem that you're playing in. Rebecca, I know I'm done a little bit early. Happy to open it up for Q&A questions. I've seen some people log off, but would love for anyone to chime in and just kind of make this conversational, maybe a little bit more workshop-esque.
Absolutely. All right. So let's transition to a conversation. So anybody have any questions or comments to share? I see some here in the chat, which is awesome, but we want to hear from you guys and anything that is on your mind. I'm going to share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whoever wants to go, please feel free to jump in.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Chris and Rebecca, for everything. It has been a great experience, and actually, I have been in different training around the world, and this is the best so far. Thank you so much.
While amazing.
Really, really, thank you.
So happy to hear it.
Great. Okay, well, while people are waiting on questions, Rebecca, do we want to give Luis a few minutes to share his piece? Is that appropriate?
Oh yeah, great callback. Luis, are you still here with us? Would you like to jump in and share?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Well, I'm the creator of a prop tech company, and it's operating real estate, as you know. And I've been doing a business with a group, and I mentioned to them that I had this platform coming to market in a few weeks, and that I would like to share that to them. But honestly, my intention was not pitching anything for getting funding or anything in that sense. And when I presented to the platform to them by email, by Zoom call, they invited me the director of this family office invited me for a meeting. So when I went to the meeting, the first question I asked him is, how much time do you have available for me? He says 1 hour and a half, which I thought to myself, hey, this is very unusual, because normally, the meetings with investors are a few minutes, but he said he had 1 hour and a half. And then we ended up meeting for 3 hours. And he got very interested in funding the platform. But as Chris says, in those days, the volatility of the Wall Street, the stock market in New York was very high, and they were losing a lot of money in their portfolio. So he got a little scared about new investments, and he put the operation on hold. But the thing I want to share with you is that, I have some previous experiences in making strategic alliances for global market. And my personal inclination is to get strategic partners rather than VCs or angel investors. And that's why I asked the question to Chris about how family offices fit in this equation. That's what I wanted to share, and maybe suggest to some of you that to look for strategic investors rather than VCs. Basically VCs, because they focus mostly in growth and scaling, and sometimes the pressure for the founders is very high. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think it's great, Luis. And you mentioned I'll answer that question in just a second, El Salvador. You mentioned that your platform was in relation to real estate. Am I correct?
Yes.
So obviously there's a strategic partnership or opportunity there, because the majority of these family offices, that is very high on their list as a safer, there's a model for it, right? And you know, unless, you know, the fear of this big crash that may be coming or whatnot, but that's a strategic partner for you because of the product or solution you have. So I just want to point that out. It's a very good success story. And, you know, he went to the family offices because he's going to go to the family offices, already he has, because his product is something that is of value to the family office's customer. Those customers that they may be managing their money, they're investing in real estate. They're also investing in like oil and gas, at least here in Dallas, and maybe other things in other parts of, you know, of the country or the world. So I think there's a very good story in there. Also, I just want to highlight, it's because his audience, because of the value that he can bring to that audience, the family office wants to keep their clients. And so if they can bring things to them to say, hey, look at this really great platform that we just invested in or that we're working with, that's a win for them, that maybe they can even capture more clients from other family offices because they did that deal with Luis. So thanks so much for sharing that story.
Thank you.
So we have in the chat a question from Salvador. So I can read it out for us. So unless Salvador, you want to jump in? I read it out. How much should we spend in an agency like yours to craft a professional story at an early stage for investors? Haha, tricky question for you.
Yeah, it is. Tricky question. I
Sorry,
will tell you.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry. The hard questions are good. I would tell you the way we do it is we really do it based on your revenue, based on how much money that, you know, you've made. We also do it based on opportunity. And so, you know, I'd love to tell you, oh, we have a standard number and this is the number. That's not exactly a reality. You know, we've worked with, you know, pre-revenue investors that feel like they have a really great product and they're ready to go pitch, and we've charged them, you know, either a monthly retainer to work on it, or it's project based where it's a certain amount of time. So what I would tell you, the better, I guess, answer I could give you is ask a lot of questions about the marketing agency. That's one. And the questions I would be asking is really about, have they worked with a client like you, and have they helped them get the results that you're hoping to get? And here's why, is that a lot of marketing agencies that I interact with, they're either in two buckets. One, they are outcome driven, where like, we want to help you get, you know, revenue, we want to help you get sales, we want to help you get funding, and they have success in that, and that's where their mind is. Or they're really great creatives that can do really great graphics that are, you know, really great from a brand identity, brand positioning type piece, but they don't really know how that converts to opportunity, to growth, and to sales. That is the biggest factor that I would tell you that is the shift. Is you want to start from the outcome with them. So like, hey, I'm trying to raise whatever your number, I'm trying to raise $10 million. How do you all help me get to that? And if they then all go back to like, oh, well, we're going to help build a really great website and a really great deck and a really great, and you're kind of like, well, does that help me get to the 10 million? Or are you going to help me evolve my pitch and help me tell my story? Are you going to help me identify who the investors are? Like some of the things we talked about today. So sorry, I can't give you an exact number. I would tell you that, with the power use of AI, you can kind of get first versions of some of these things on your own that you can iterate and grow over time. Remember, that investor may judge you a little bit on like what the deck looks like, but they're more likely judging you on the story and the guts and the details that you're telling, if that makes sense. But if they're going to help you with not only designing the pitch deck, but also they're going to help you with, you know, what's the story inside, and how are we communicating from slide to slide, man, that, you know, I would say that's a pretty good agency. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
All right, we have another comment here in the chat. So Victoria, do you want to read out your question?
Sure. So we are an early stage nonprofit, and we are trying to build our community and our programs, etc., events, all of that. We serve women and allies in tech, but we're in a bit of like an chicken or the egg first situation where we need the programs and events to get an audience and solidify that. But at the same time, in order to gain the audience, we need to produce the events and produce the programs. So we need sponsors to help us with that. So we're trying to figure out how to better position ourselves and, you know, get the traction going. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of, I think it makes sense. I'll kind of maybe share with you a story or two. So this is something that pops up in my world weekly because of Dallas Fort Worth. We have a lot of startup companies that are trying to host summits or events or experiences, but they really don't have a lot of money, and so they are leaning on sponsors or, you know, sponsors or investors to say, yeah, we'll help you put on the summit. And they can't find the sponsors or investors because you don't already have the audience. And so the sponsors or investors are concerned that, well, what am I getting for my money, right? What's the return am I getting? Am I correct about the question?
Yes, pretty much. We have educational programs already, and we have a community already. We're actually based in Dallas. Well, we are kind of based in both Miami and Dallas, but the majority of my team is in Dallas. But yes, so we can show some things and we can show initial traction, if that makes sense, because we've done whatever we can from out of pocket and from what we have right now with what we have right now. But in order to go to the next stage and try to like get some, even if it's minor sponsors and all of that, we're kind of stuck on how to do that, or yeah.
Okay, so here's one thing that I would I'm going to offer you something, is that if you will just reach out to me outside of this, I have somebody here locally that does this exact thing. She works with major companies that are looking to sponsor events, and it's specifically into women, women-owned organizations. So I might have a connection here in Dallas. I might be able to help out, you know, with that. She's ran a lot of events. We've ran them together in the past. So that would be one thing I would offer you that that might be helpful for you. But my easy story, or my simple, I guess, answer to your you know question is, once again, is we have to shift what the return is for these partners or sponsors. And this is what I mean by shift. We have to change the narrative. And I have this on events all the time. The sponsor typically just is thinking 2 + 2 = 4, meaning I put my money in, people are going to see it, which means they're going to buy, or we're going to get stage time, or whatever it is. And we have to shift and change the story to be like, and I'm looking at your site, but we have to shift and change the story to talk about why them investing in a Tech Besties event or experience can equal something different than just return on investment. I spent $2,000 and what did I get out of it? Now here's why. Because these sponsors, and they're probably in a marketing department, right? And they're investing in you all. They're answering to somebody that's saying, and if I get in the weeds, I apologize, but they're having to look at attribution, right? You might know attribution. So attribution is like, when I spend marketing dollars, can I attribute sales that came from those marketing dollars? Okay. And so you've got to help them kind of see how they might be able to be a good storyteller internally by giving you all $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is, because they feel like they can attribute sales. The example is that JPMorganChase and however much money that they pay to sponsor some of the things going on in Endeavor, there is some sort of attribution for them, even if it's just brand awareness, to say, this is a good investment for us because founders are starting to open bank accounts with us, or Endeavor's introducing people to local JPMorganChase centers that need to set up banking or get business loans, or et cetera, right? So I would tell you, you need to shift the narrative away from, you spend $2,000 and you get 200 eyeballs on this, or the 200 eyeballs you get have this much spending power and they can do this. That would be my short answer. But once again, if you'll just reach out to me individually, I'd happy to link you up with, with somebody that I know that she might be able to help you out more.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Adriana, do you want to go next?
Yes, for sure. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for the knowledge that you shared with us. It was amazing content. And I would like to know, in your experience raising funds, which is the time for a pitch, understanding that there are 3 different types of investors. Because sometimes with my co-founders, it takes, depending on each of our experience, we are more focused on some things. But I would like to know which for you is reasonable time for the pitch.
Are you, there's some questions I have to ask before I answer this. Are you, it sounds like you're pitching with your co-founders, so it's like 2 or 3 of you are all doing the pitch together. Is that what I?
Well, sometimes, well, at the beginning, we are trying to do the pitch with at least 3 co-founders, but I know now that it's better that just one co-founder make the pitch. And we are learning in the process. With your content, for me, was a new world, because sometimes we think that we know everything related to giving a good pitch deck, but now you really appreciate that you transform my vision of this. But in terms of time, for you, which is the time reasonable to give a pitch deck for angel investors, for VCs, or for strategic partners, as you mentioned?
Yeah, as far as kind of a reasonable time, we've been in situations where, and I think Luis kind of asked how much time do I have. The amount of time they gave him was very long. I've seen everything from you get 15 minutes, like a good TED Talk, all the way to probably a normal is like a 30 or 45, minute time frame. Rebecca, can you tell me the pitch competition that's coming up? How much time are you guys giving all your founders to pitch then?
At most 5 minutes.
So 5. So now you're seeing that dependent on the setting and the environment that you're in, that really details the amount of time that you have. So it's a tough question. I would tell you, I would say less about time confinement and more about value, and do I have something valuable and impactful to say? So judge it more upon, can I keep them engaged, right? Then I bet you've been to a movie and you've heard someone say, it was kind of slow in certain parts, right? You've heard that word. That means that those parts of the movie maybe they didn't matter. They didn't actually help the story. So that'd be my challenge to you, is just to think about, are there parts of our pitch that really aren't furthering or helping us? I wouldn't want to listen to a pitch for an hour. I wouldn't want that, quite honest, especially if they gave me the deck ahead of time. So there's some variables in here. Did I get the deck ahead of time? What's the setting? Am I face-to-face? Is it virtual? Are we in a networking meeting? Right. So that's kind of why I said you need to equip yourself with a 5-minute and a 10-minute and a 30-minute and an hour long. Like, you need to equip yourself to be able to do all of those. And then whatever the setting is, you're able to then, tell it in those ways. Is that helpful?
Yes, I was thinking, when you are trying to pitch with a VC, for example, you have one opportunity, probably the introduction for about 10 to 15 minutes, just to have the chance for the second pitch, that it could be more time, like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, it can, so that's why I said, like, if you have a 45-minute version, look at that as like your full, kind of version. But I would tell you that here's the best answer. It's shrinking. the time is shrinking. And here's why. It's because people are thinking earlier, oh, I know what this is. Oh, I figured this one out. Oh, I know where they're going. And so now the time is shrinking and the attention span you get. I mean, just think about Zoom calls now where you see people that they're like this, and then they're like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. So when you start seeing that attention, so that's why I would say, like, if you can get to it and get to it in a way where, they're engaged and they're staying engaged and they're in it, that's the win. And so that's some of those cues that you pick up from looking at your audience, right? And seeing, how am I doing? Are they engaged? Are they not? And I'll be honest, my personality, maybe not yours, I'm pretty blunt. So like if I'm in it and I see them and they're like looking away, I just stop and go, "Hey Tom, am I losing you? Am I missing you? What did I?" And I just stop my pitch and ask, because I want them to know I'm watching you. I'm making sure that this is compelling to you. Is this no longer compelling? Are you not interested in, like, I'm very honest about that because I get a lot of respect from me being that way and asking those questions. I'm not a woman, so that may be different in your world. I don't want to speak for you. It may be different in your product, maybe different in the way your co-founders do it. But I would just tell you, like, judge it based on the audience and, like, are they looking away? Are they doing something else? Do you feel like they're distracted? Do they even turn their camera on? Some things like that.
Amazing. Thank you both. On that note, I am going to start wrapping us up. Okay, so I have a couple of slides I want to show you. So takeaways, I think we covered so much content today. And Chris, thank you so much for this masterclass on mastering the art of the pitch. So a couple of things that we talked about, right? Like mastering the 5 elements, the identifiable character, significant moment, authentic emotion, sticky details, and including the resolution cliffhanger in the story that you're telling. Mapping the story to the pitch deck, right? How you're going to align the different elements with the pitch structure. This is something that founders see a lot, right? And I think Chris spent a lot of time explaining why this structure matters and how you can really hook people in. Problem, solution, market, and the ask. But remember that one size does not fit all, and you need to adapt your pitch depending on your audience. So especially consider what are their motivations and what really matters to them. And remember that less is more. Customize your content accordingly to the audience and the person that you're meeting with. And lastly, tailoring your story, right? Depending on the moment that you're in your fundraising journey, there are different people that you're going to be talking to. There are different elements that will attract or interest an angel investor that is different from VCs, that is different from strategic partners. So think about that as you're crafting your story to make sure that you're creating the most compelling pitch possible. Just 2 quotes that I grabbed from Chris while we were together this morning. The greatest storytellers are the greatest story listeners. That was really interesting, especially because it speaks to how much attention founders should be giving to their customers and making sure that that is highlighted and emphasized in the pitch. And that the most powerful word in the English language is but, because that's how all the interesting stories begin with. So before I go into final reminders and what's coming up next, Chris, anything you want to share with the group? Any final words or final thoughts about everything that we covered this morning?
Yeah, just practice. Try it out on different people. Learn from it. Being a great storyteller is not just a one-time thing. You got to just continue to practice and hone that skill over time. So don't get frustrated if it's not good once, twice, 5 times. You have to keep telling the story. I try to get better every day.
Thank you. Final reminders, okay? So we have recorded this session. We're going to make the link available on YouTube within the next 24 hours so that you can have access to the content that we covered today. And if any of you have not registered for the rest of the bootcamp, please drop your emails in the chat so that you can receive the recap as well as notifications and reminders for the rest of the sessions that are to come, okay? Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about fundraising with intention and strategy. So the blurb on that session is raising capital isn't luck, it's strategy. Today, you get practical tools to map your fundraising journey, build your target list, and position yourself for a smart, successful raise, okay? And Something that Chris mentioned that I think is super timely for today is that coming up next, we have the Endeavor Pitch Competition. It's happening on June 5th. Spoiler alert, Chris is going to be helping us train the semifinalists. So if you enjoyed today's session, I think this will be an awesome opportunity to pick his brain a little bit more. And applications are open until this Saturday. It's a very easy application, and we'll make sure to share it with you after with the recap materials. Okay. So on that note, thank you all so much for spending the morning with us. Thank you, Chris, for sharing so much wisdom with the entrepreneurs and everybody in the room. If anybody has any final questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. If not, we'll see you tomorrow for day 3. All right.
I have a question. I don't know if I'm allowed to do it live. Yeah.
Yes, sure. Go for it.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm currently out of the US. We have the company in the US, but the pitch competition will be remote. It will be like in person.
We're going to have both versions. So you
Okay.
can apply because we are going to have a version for those that are outside of Miami.
Cool. Super. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Anyone else?
Awesome.
Rebecca,
Thank you all.
sorry,
Yes.
Rebecca, when is it gonna be the pitch competition? So applies by 10?
June
By the 10th?
5th. June 5th. And the deadline to apply is May 10th. And in between that, there's going to be trainings, the semifinals, and then more training for the finalists.
Yeah, so when is if we get selected to the semifinals, when that will be?
You would know if you were selected to be a semifinalist next week. So the deadline is this Saturday. You should hear back from our team latest next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Live?
But the pitch of the semifinals, or there is no pitch?
So there is no live pitch for the semifinals. We're doing something a little bit different to select the finalists.
Oh, okay.
And everything between the application and the preparation will be virtual.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Juan?
Hi, Rebecca, how are you?
Hi.
The application for the pitch competition is just for companies that are in the American market, or can be companies that for example, we are not there yet, so.
You don't have to be in Miami. We just look, the criteria is mainly around business model and a little bit on traction. So that information can find in the application form, which is in the chat, but you are able to apply even if you're not based in the US.
No, okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can you please repeat where do we apply, Rebecca?
It's in the chat. It's in the chat.
Oh,
The
okay.
link is in the
Thank
chat
you.
right now, and
Thank you.
we will send it as part of the recap.
Thank you.
Okay. And then if you guys come tomorrow and the day after, we're going to continue reminding you all of the link and the deadline. Okay. Awesome. Thank you all for spending the morning with us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 3.